Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. This channel is designed to help small companies, both public and private, gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest, CEO Jeb Besser with Modular Medical, ticker symbol MODD. Modular Medical is a development stage medical device company seeking to produce a next generation insulin pump to expand access to a higher standard of glycemic management for people with diabetes. This company was founded by Paul DePerna, which is the former founder of Tandem. Uh, there seems to be some confusion out there in the marketplace that there is a crowded space of diabetes insulin pumps. And while that is true in the higher end, more complicated pumps, it's not true when it comes to modular medical. But I'm going to let Jeb tell you more about that in just a minute. This is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a certified financial planner. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with a follow-up to it's a good story. It's just, with the markets doing what they're doing and some of the things that are happening in this particular field, it's a story that I think is being missed. And after doing a recent raise, I thought it would be a good time to have Jeb come in and give us an update on MODD and what the raise was for and how things look moving forward. Jeb, thanks for coming in. Jeb Besser with Modular Medical Devices. MODD is the symbol.
Mm-hmm. No, thanks for having me, Tim. It's always great to catch up.
All right, so let's where do you want to start?
Well, let's talk about the raise. The raise is a good place to start. That's the most recent incremental news. So we went out and we raised $12.5 million with Newbridge, but functionally it was mainly Black River, which is a affiliate of Newbridge that has a large number of high net worth clients who are fundamental investors and sticky and sophisticated, et cetera. And so they were about half the raise, and the other half was existing shareholders. I think we basically had no new investors. This was not broadly marketed. So the good news about that was, the bad news was we had to include half a warrant, up 25%, with no ratchets, no special anythings, but half a warrant. The good news is that we did the deal right at market, and so no discount. And
what was the price? What was the price then when you did it?
It was 92 cents.
Okay.
Yep. And what else? Maybe it was 96 cents. Anyway, somewhere in the low to mid 90s. And the other question I get asked about this is, why did you do it as a PIPE? Why didn't you just pull down the $10 million remaining on your shelf? And the answer is because I'm still subject to baby shelf, just like I raised $8 million back in November, because that was all I could raise on the shelf because of baby shelf rules at $1.50. We want to preserve that $10 million on the shelf in case there's an opportunity much later on in the year to raise more money if we never clear the baby shelf hurdle, although I would very much like to clear the baby shelf hurdle at some point, so that we, because me hand waving and saying, ooh, I have access to 10 million in capital is not going to impress any strategic that we ever talk to.
Explain the baby shelf thing real quickly.
So the baby shelf rule is this ancient SEC rule, and I have to say I've never really looked into what the origin of it is, but it basically says if your unaffiliated market cap is below $75 million in a rolling 12-month period, you cannot sell more than 20% of your unaffiliated stock.
Okay.
Or you can't sell more than 20% of your how's the calculation done? Yeah, I believe it's unaffiliated. And so we got really close to clearing that level after we got cleared, but we just needed to close above that level for one day, and it didn't happen. Back in 22, when we uplisted to the NASDAQ, we missed the measurement to be able to, use our full $50 million shelf whenever we wanted for a year by $200,000. And the reason that we missed by $200,000 is that the only way the deal happened in February 22 is that Manchester, my fund, put in $1 million to round out the deal, and that pushed us below the unaffiliated level by $200,000, which is a really bad break. So anyway, that's the history of it. So as a result, I'm constantly trying to manage this baby shelf thing. So even if it looks like, wow, your S3 has $35 million on it, why are you pussyfooting around here? Why don't you just solve the problem? The answer is this SEC rule doesn't really allow me to do that in one fell swoop. So by doing it as a pipe, and then registering those shares, if the stock appreciates, then maybe we either will clear baby shelf, but at the very least, because we just hit the 1-year anniversary of the $10 million raise we did with Titan, or $11 million we did with Titan last February, that will be available to us if we need it opportunistically at some point later in the year.
Okay.
So, all right, enough about financing mechanics. So what are we going to use the money for? So $5 million of it is going to supply chain optimization and improvements. What do I mean by that? Most of that is that while we have this nice manufacturing line that's down in Mexico that's just in the final stages of validation, the molds that are feeding into that line are the original prototype molds that we got cleared with the FDA on. And those molds they produce very high quality product, but they were also designed to be cost optimized so that if the FDA said you need to change something about your cartridge, we could throw them away and be able to afford that. Now that we're cleared and we know the cartridge design, we need, those molds at some point are going to run out of shots. And it would make much more economic sense for them to be 4 or 8 cavity molds. And the lead time to produce said molds is 6 months to actually make them, and then another 4 months to validate them, because you have to validate each cavity, right? And so what I don't want to do is be in a position to have 6,000 customers potentially coming on the line in, late this year, early next year, and then say, oh, by the way, I'm going to have to throttle down my growth because I'm going to run out of my molds just kicked the bucket. By the way, putting these new molds in also lowers my cost of goods on the initial line by 50%, 50 on a unit rolling off the line. So on an ongoing basis, to not make that investment is pretty stupid. And if, by the way, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, I'm going to take this asset off your hands, which would be fine if that's the right thing to do. I don't want to fail diligence because they're going to be like, anyone who would potentially partner with us is going to have other alternatives. And if their alternative is an internal program and they're like, well, you're going to save me 3 years to market versus what I think my internal program could do if we execute, but actually it's only 2 years because it's going to take a year to scale up your mold capacity, that would be pretty stupid for us to not spend the money. And it's a long lead time item. It's the longest lead time item in the ability to improve the production line. So we're going to spend that money. We've already started to put POs in on it, and the plan is to be ready to stand up the 6,000. Be ready to serve 6,000 customers come like early Jan of 2026.
Okay.
Why are you not so next obvious question, why are you not and so the rest of the money basically extends our runway into October, November of this year.
Okay.
What catalyst do you get if you go into October, November? Well, one, we're still planning to put the product on humans in July.
Okay.
2, we're still planning to run these clinical trials in advance of that to show that it works on humans. 3, we're still planning to obviously we have to validate the line, both of the cartridge and the controller before we can start putting it on humans. And finally, why are you not launching broadly with the 2-base version right now and trying to fill up that line right now? Well, there are a couple reasons for that. One is I just did 3 weeks of diligence with doctors on what they thought of our product. And the feedback was very, very positive for the segment of patients that we're targeting. But when you think about our product and you look at the cartridge as it exists right now, we have this pigtail here. So the pigtail we did because we thought it would reduce our regulatory risk, because this pigtail has already been used on approved products or cleared products in the United States, delivering insulin to customers. Unfortunately, that was back in 2010, so the FDA ended up making us redo all the tests anyway. The good news is that we did all the tests, so we know what they are. And then the other reason we wanted, so I don't want our product to be defined by this. And the doctors basically said, look, I get it. The pigtail's kind of cute. There might be a few people that like that, but most of my patients, I want to tell them it's an Omnipod, but it's 2 pieces and it's removable and it holds 3 mLs and you don't need a phone to control it. You can just use the button on top. That's the value proposition as they see it. And so, don't fight City Hall. Don't force them to do that. And the other problems with this are, one, there's a worldwide shortage of infusion sets right now because of increased demand for GLP-1s, increased demand for other infusion-related products, increased stress on the system, and what used to be a 5 to 10% grower kind of business at best is now a business that's trying to grow 15 or 20% when all their operational resources are also being pulled towards auto injectors for GLP-1s. And there's a major factory in this space that has not yielded properly. And so there's a short-term supply disruption related to that, just as Beta Bionics and Sequel are trying to launch their products and also pulling infusion sets. So all of these things are just causing chaos in this market. And if I launch this and then I have to take customers back off it because I can't get sets, that's going to make us look really bad. And they're charging us too much for these anyway. So the plan is swap it out for this. And this is an integrated set where instead of using the pigtail, you got a cartridge. It's identical to our current cartridge, except instead of the tube coming out the side, there's a little piece that points straight down. And inside the container, you have this. Okay, you take this off. Here's your pad. It's got adhesive on the bottom of it. You take the inserter, go click, lift it up. It automatically peels it off. You put it on yourself or on your arm, on your abdomen or your arm. You fire it. Now the pad is in with a soft cannula and a needle. You pull this off. It automatically sharp withdraws the needle. You throw it away in the trash. Now you've got your plate in place and you just click the cartridge on top and you're good to go. Really simple, really slick, tubeless, like an Omnipod, 3 mLs, still removable, and oh, by the way, costs 75% less than the pigtail. and we can get them. So for all those reasons, we're going to do a very, very limited commercial launch in 2 or 3 places. One, because I need to be able to find all the customers again because I have to retrain them, right, on the new style of delivery, which all our early testing says people love. 2, the FDA risk here is pretty minimal, we think, because we already got a set cleared last year and we already did all the testing, so we sort of know what's involved and the usability data looks great. And 3, we think we can file this thing in August or early September, and then we think it'll be cleared by year end. Just about the same time that we'd have the molds to be able to serve the full amount of customers on our commercial line.
Got it.
And look, I have to be completely honest and say, I've been sort of surprised in our discussions with, potential partners and how much more excited they are when they see that. Like, we always meant for it to be a transitory step, but we've really stepped up the timeline of it because you got to give them what they want right now, and not like in the future, but like right now. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it, and I think it represents the total volume of the filing and the amount of work that it represents is like 10% of what we did last year.
Okay.
So that's another big catalyst.
So that's a big one, though, right? In my head. Have you shown this thing around? I mean, has it been?
It's on the website now. It's in our investor deck. I think shortly we're going to have a how-to video. When we go to ADCES in August, we're not going to be talking about the tube product because we're going to sunset it, sometime in the fall. It's going to be, except for the existing, whoever's on it at that point, where we'll keep them going until we switch them over to this.
Yeah.
But it's going to be coming soon, Mod 1 tubeless or something like that.
Okay. I think that's going to get a lot of people's attention.
I think so. Yeah. Oh, and I should also tell, I think the trade name we're going to use for it tentatively is Pivot. So
Pivot.
not quite as techy and as catchy as Mod 1, right? But Pivot. Yeah. So and we already own the trademark for that. We've owned it since 2019. So anyway, that's sort of how we're going to position it as, and I think that's how we want to be seen in the marketplace is only the second tubeless patch pump to come on the market that's fully featured.
So the other issue or question people could have is, the intent of mod was to get the approval and then hopefully sell to a strategic, right?
That's right.
But the timing of you had another company that basically came public, right?
Yep.
Kind of messed things up a little bit. You had a couple of bankers in mind that you wanted to potentially hide
Yeah.
conflict of interest there, right?
Yep. Yep.
And
And they engaged them 3 weeks before we got the clearance. So nothing we could really do about that. Yep.
right.
And
So
and honestly, why would we want to go out and try and run a process in front of someone potentially going public with a big valuation that redefined what a startup might be worth in this space as a comp,
right.
which is what happened, right? Like Beta Bionics went public and at peak had a $1.1 billion valuation on 15,000 customers.
So let's look at the players, right? You got Beta Bionics, you got
Yep.
Medtronic, who had the boo boo with the company in what, South Korea?
With EOFlow. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then you've got what's the other one?
You have Insulit,
Yeah,
who has a product that looks a lot like us.
yeah.
And then you have Tandem, company that Paul founded. And
Okay.
then you might have other adjacent players like Roche or Dexcom or Abbott who make wearables but aren't really in this space, certainly not in the United States. Yep.
All right. So that didn't go quite as planned, right?
Yep.
For several reasons.
Yep.
What would
That's
you
right.
think the interest level is now?
I would say that the interest level since the Beta Bionics, well, let's back up for 1 second. I think that basically what I've learned is that the strategics for 15 years have said, I'm not going to play this game. I'm not going to buy the startups because even if they raise $150 million, they might not get cleared, which happened 3 times in this space over the last 15 years. Even if they get cleared, it's going to be such a kludgy product that no one's going to have to care, that no one's going to care. Vigo, good example of that. And then finally, even if they do get cleared and even if the product is semi-decent, they're not going to be able to raise money and really ramp up. And now Beta Bionics has ended that supposition as well. So I think now they have to take anyone entering the space a lot more seriously in terms of their ability to access capital. And with Beta Bionics and then this other company started by Dean Kamen of Segway Scooter Frame, Sequel Twist, potentially coming to market with their high-end-ish hockey puck with 24 inches of tubing pump that's been around since 06, but that got cleared in July of 23. They're now going to have two well-funded competitors that have no near-term need to make money that are going to be just generally messing up their space. So I think there's more urgency now. And I would say the level of interest is much higher, and but there's still this aversion on the part of the bankers to, well, I need to know that there's like hot and heavy interest before I'm going to really do something with you. So I'm going to get you halfway there, and then it's going to be up to you to get me 90% of the way there, and then I'll take the last 10%. And then once I have one player at the table, then I can run a true auction.
Right.
And I think that's where we are now. And I think maybe I didn't appreciate how skeptical people were that, oh, well, you have a tube, are you really ever going to get to tubeless, et cetera. And now that I have, now that I can just show people this and we have the plans and the POs, et cetera, it's like, But this is happening, guys. This is happening. And literally the only change in our cartridge is instead of where we glue the tube in, just points down and locks into the plate.
Right.
Like this is not like as a risk proposition, this is not, there's no new materials being introduced here. There's no.
Right.
So
Which,
yeah, so I would look, I mean, I was disappointed is the wrong word because I didn't want to run a process before Beta Bionics came out. And then the other thing was Embecta got cleared 4 days before us with their Me Too pump that looked a lot like an Omnipod. And then their CEO came out and said, we're not going to commercialize it. We spent $200 million on it, but we're not going to commercialize it. We're going to sell it. And then nobody wanted to buy it. And they had to lay off the 100 people in December, which is why no one's ever going to restart that, because once you lose those people, you have no knowledge of how to make it. And frankly, why would you do that anyway? Because Insulet did, I think I saw this on LinkedIn, 130 or 140 million pods last year. How are you ever going to compete with that? How are you going to catch them with the same basic design? Because remember, the Insulet design and the Embecta design also, you throw away the entire thing every 3 days. So that's the system on a chip, the Bluetooth chip, the NFC chip, the whole pumping mechanism, and multiple proprietary batteries. How are you, and you're going against Insulet, who spent millions of process engineer hours trying to figure out how to make this and has all this scale and has a plant in Malaysia and a plant in Massachusetts that's so automated that they can afford to have a plant in Massachusetts. I'm sorry, like it's going to take you, it would have taken them forever to catch up, which is why no one wanted to sign up for that trip.
right. Makes
In
sense.
order to enter this space as with a patch pump, which is what everyone wants, which is clearly based on the multiple of Insulet and based on patient interest, is the winning form factor. You have to do something different, like say, separate the electronics. You can reuse them 30 to 60 times as long. Which, if you think about it, since those are the most expensive components of the device, is a huge cost saving.
Right. Right. Which is where
And
you,
another thing we're going to add in addition to the tubeless part is we're going to make the controller last 180 days instead of 90. In order to do that, we're changing precisely nothing. We just didn't want to do it for the initial submission because to make it run longer, we've already done the test, but to make it run longer, you have to do twice as much test. It's basically like you have to push the button on top twice as many times. Spoiler alert, the button doesn't break because if you push it twice as many times. So
so you're in good position there.
yeah, I think we're in a really good position there. Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's and I think the other fear that people have is, well, look, Beta Bionics spent $100 million in a year selling against the other guys, which by the way, I'm very excited about the Beta Bionics product because it is a mini med with an algorithm on it that does make it easier to use, but it's not a patch pump.
Right.
And they've said they're going to spend $50 million developing something like ours that might be on the market in like at the end of 27 and probably at scale in the middle of 28. So, um, you know, I think what the other guys are going to do is they're going to dumb down their algorithms to try and basically come up with a nerfed version of it that's less accurate, but requires less work, which is exactly what Beta has done and shown that there is a real appetite for that. So we're kind of like two halves of the same coin. They've taken an existing, basically a knockoff of an existing hardware platform and added software to it to make it the patient experience easier to access a new group of patients. We've gone and said we're going to make a brand new piece of hardware to make it easier for the patients, and then we're going to add software on top of it. I couldn't tell you whether or not the split of new potential pump patients is 70-30 in favor of software or hardware. I can tell you it would be better if we did both. But obviously we're heading in that direction, right? In terms of adding AID to this to make it easy, as long as it makes it easier. So, so look, I think, but let's go back to the base question here. How are you going to commercialize this? And the answer is, I think our initial target market is to use distributors to serve the primary care physicians who basically never see a pump rep.
So you're going for your CE mark, right?
Oh, well, so we're going for, in the US, we would use distributors on a commission basis to sell into the PCP market.
Okay.
which we think is the place where all the diabetes educators say our product resonates. And we would use a very small education oriented sales force to go to the high volume 200 diabetes educators that I'm always talking about and make sure they understand, look, this is an alternative for your patients that reject the others because they're too complex, don't like the form factor, need a lot more insulin, need it to be removable, don't want it to relate to their phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the features of our product that we've always talked about. In Europe, we're going for the CE mark because in Europe, the market's more price sensitive. There are niche markets where needing AID is not necessary, and where there's a lot less pump penetration. And I think, and there's an ability to use distributors where, once again, we're not building commercial infrastructure. And there are other places in the world that we can do the same thing.
Okay. So, I mean, that's one of the big concerns people might have, right? If you're going to commercialize this on your own, hiring a
Yes.
huge sales force would be an issue, right?
It's designed to be learned in less than 30 minutes. We don't need the same kind of sales force. Patients don't need that level of sophistication. And it's all designed to make this easier to learn,
Right.
to move off multiple daily injections. And so I think, say, for instance, someone who's used to selling a sleep apnea product like CPAP, ask yourself, is this an easier or a harder sale than CPAP? If you think about it, CPAP, you've got to convince the patient, the doctor and the sales rep have to convince the patient to do a sleep study either in their home with a proprietary device or spend the night in a strip mall at a sleep clinic. And then they have to go back, they have to fill out all the paperwork, they have to be eligible, they have to have a substantial copay, they have to sign a maintenance and supplies contract, and they have to learn how to clean it so they don't get an infection and lose their sense of taste and smell. Like someone I know did. And so that you think about that hurdle versus this is 30 minutes of training.
Right. Right.
It's just not. I think those sales reps are totally capable of selling this product, and I think there are other overseas. The distributors who are available are perfectly capable of selling this kind of product and have existing infrastructure that they want better utilization on. So I think there are real advantages. I think there are lots of places we can go to fill up that initial 6,000 patients worth of capacity that we turn on tubeless in January or whenever we get cleared, in different markets. And by the way, that CE mark application, that's tubeless also. There's never going to be a Ypsomed pigtail on the CE mark application. So
Which is a big change, right? I mean, I could see that as being that alone. I think is more of a it's just a convenience factor of not having that little pigtail.
yeah, no, I think it's helpful. And you look, it's not like we did the tube with the idea that we would have it forever. This is just the direction we were going in the whole time.
Right. Right. All right. So human trials start in July, right?
No. We think commercial customer in July, sometime in July.
Okay.
Someone who's actually paying for the product, who's wearing it in a real world environment. But before that, we still have to run our 10 type 1 clinicians who already wear a pump and a CGM just to make sure that they can wear it fine. And then we'll do like 25 or 30 patients in a single practice.
Okay. Got it. The difference with your sales force or your customer, you're going to general. You can go to general practitioners, right? I mean,
Who
that's
are deathly afraid of writing the current pumps because they're just so intimidated by them. They think they're too complicated, et cetera. I mean, I think as one person put it to me the other day, like, gosh, your audience is kind of like the cricket audience. The $20, hey, you can have a cell phone now and it can get text messages and it has things called like apps.
yeah.
So I think, look, you got to start somewhere, and where you don't want to start is in the teeth of the market where everyone's scrambling all over each other to add more features.
Right. And I think this is a really, I mean, it's a differentiated product. It opens up a whole market for these
Well,
general
yeah,
practice.
and I think look, Beta Bionics has a differentiated product because they've added an easier to use piece of software, and I don't think that lead will last forever, but it's a lead right now, and I think that when you've gone this long with only a third of the patients in type 1 and less than 10% of the patients in type 2 not wearing a device, you got to do something different.
Right.
If you have a Me Too product, one, it won't work because you'll be that far behind in integration and features, et cetera, for the people that want all that stuff. And two, it won't appeal to the people who have said, not for me, for all this time.
Right. Right.
So, yep. So,
All right. So we had so you did this raise it at 92 or 96 cents.
yeah,
You dipped down to 70 cents, right?
before the deal went off. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
And so in case nobody's noticed, this tariff thing has got people a little riled up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you saw about and so let's just anticipate one other question. So right now we make the product in Mexico,
Yep.
and so you saw that there's a carve out now for medical oriented products
No, I
being
haven't
imported.
seen that.
There is one. So,
Okay.
and one and two, we could put a duplicate line inside the United States if that's an issue come January. We
Okay.
already own it. We use it for testing at our facility right now inside the United States. So we would move it to our partner Philips Medisize facility inside the tariff wall.
Okay.
But also I'm reluctant to move this line inside the tariff wall because we might very well be supplying a customer overseas a good portion of the capacity on that line, and they're going to want to know that it's not in the United States.
Right. Right.
Because I think the chances of Mexico getting in a trade war with somewhere else in Latin America or Asia or the EU, I think is quite minimal.
Right.
So, um, so I think we're in good shape there.
Yeah, I think you're in good shape too. Not a
Yeah,
big concern with the whole tariff.
yeah, yeah. There you go. Anyway, so
All right. I think that the stock at this level is just makes no sense to me. Right. I mean, and I'm sure you feel the same way.
well, I think I would agree with you in that, I bought stock personally at $1.60 some after the last deal went off. We participated in the last deal. And then in this deal, our fund Manchester put $500,000 in and I put $150,000 in. So we continue to eat our own cooking as far
Right.
as being an active participant in the stock and believing in the value.
I mean, what's the risk here, Jeb? What's the risk?
I mean, I guess there's a little bit of FDA risk on the tubeless set getting cleared and us hitting our submission timeline. There's always risk, right? There's always a tiny bit of risk there. Although obviously you can see it. It's done. Like, we're um, maybe the strategics couldn't care less that we have a patch pump. And we have to commercialize on our own for some period of time, and maybe we're completely wrong about any possible sales channel that doesn't require a major sales force. Although I'll just tell you, aside from Medtronic, each of the big three employed a distribution partner in Europe before they got up to a certain size where they took the business direct themselves.
Right.
So, and I think there are other markets like that too they're a really good fit for our product.
But
So
I think the first thing you said is that maybe the strategics aren't that interested. I think that's you kind of already have
I
indicated.
think I think based on the level of interest we've had since the Beta Bionics deal, I think that that's unlikely.
Right. Right. And as you move
What
further,
is the what does the deal look like? Well, I don't know. Until you get one offer on the table and then you go back and you get best and final from everyone, you don't know what you're worth, right? It's called price discovery,
yeah, I think
and it's a thing.
as soon as you have one, I think that's gonna pique the
Yeah.
interest of the others, right?
Yeah, and when that one jumps, is that when we put it on humans in a commercial environment? Is that with the tube? Is that when we submit the tubeless? Is that when we get the tubeless cleared? Is that when, is that when we start scaling up our customer base? Is that before any of those things happen because they want to take it away from one of their competitors owning it?
Right. Right.
TBD. TBD.
TBD. But I can tell you that I don't think there is the option of you go away. That's not to me, that just isn't, that's not feasible.
Yeah. No, I think that I think we have a lot of, I think the most important thing is that we keep adding value to the asset. And the sooner someone gets involved with us, the less potential encumbrances they might have to deal with if they ended up wanting to own it or partner with it, right? Like at some point, I'm going to have to start making commitments to do things commercially myself. And anyone who wanted to own this wouldn't want those encumbrances, probably.
You would think.
You would think.
Right. And
Um,
if you could look
yeah.
at what the potential catalyst for these companies would be, Medtronic, I would say, as they need a patch pump, right? They don't have one.
Well, I mean, they went to JP Morgan and said for what I think like the 17th year in a row, we're developing a patch pump, which was apparently so far along they were willing to spend $750 million for a knockoff of an Omnipod back in 2023.
Which was kind of a big mistake.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have a need, right? Like, and since then they've been pretty creative. Like huge kudos to them for doing the Freestyle Libre 3 deal. To solve the problem of, hey, our CGM isn't that good. Now they're gonna, by the end of this year, they're gonna have a good CGM. They're gonna have a really good algo, the 780G algo, and they're still gonna have the same tired tube-based platform.
Right. Right.
And then
I think you're sitting in a good position. The stock price is not reflecting that at this particular point in time, but there's I think other factors beyond just what's happening with mod. It's the small caps in general, right? I mean, they've been
I don't know. Maybe people thought that we were legitimately just going to run out of money and just go out of business this month. I don't know, but obviously, that's not happening. So,
right.
um,
You're in this to win. However that winds up working out, that's you're not going away.
we're in it. We're in it to do what's best for the asset at all times,
Right.
and what's best for the shareholders,
And what's best for
whatever
the
that is.
patients,
Yeah.
even though they
Right.
don't recognize it yet. Right.
Right. Right. Well, we're trying to provide another option for people that have had a minimal number of choices that haven't satisfied them for a very, very long time.
Right. And you've got that solution. That's what is so exciting to me, right? People don't understand it yet, but they will, and the ease of use is going to make that. I think once it really starts to get out there and people understand it, I think that's when things really start to take off for you, right?
Well, I mean, there's a need. I've not yet done an investor meeting with more than 15 people in it where there wasn't someone who was either on one of these devices, should have been on one of those devices, or looked at ours and said, "Yeah, I know people."
Right. Right. All right. You feel as though I missed anything?
I don't think so. I think we've covered things like, there are plenty of catalysts coming up over the next few months. We're going to continue to execute. The team is enthusiastic and as good as ever. We're funded to get what we need to get done. And whether or not we're a brand name ourselves or we're Intel inside for someone else, or if we're just gone, as an corporate entity, these are all outcomes that I can live with.
Gone as a corporate entity?
Yeah, yeah. Acquired by
Oh,
someone
okay,
else.
gone.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. There we
okay,
go.
gotcha.
Yes, there we
Not
go.
gone.
No, no, no.
No. All right.
I'm still taking my $1 salary, so I'm still not doing this because I'm entrenched here, and this is all I want to do for the rest of my life. as
No.
passionate as I am about it. So,
Okay. All right.
okay.
When do you think we should have how about this? The next meaningful catalyst that happens, we'll do a quick follow up. Yeah.
That's a great idea. Let's do that.
All right, man. Hold on a second. I'm going to shut this off. Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Capital. Today we had Jeb Besser, CEO of Modular Medical, ticker symbol MODD. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are very important to us here at Alpha Wolf Capital, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Capital wishes you the very best of success.